Hello and welcome back to my shop. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to share with you something I've been working on. If you've ever noticed watching some of my videos, I'm always filming right here. I'm moving the table saw, the planer, the joiner. I'm always filming right around this workbench. And it's not really because I like this workbench so much or because the lighting's great. The truth is, I'm really kind of getting tight on room. Despite having a pretty reasonable sized shop, it's really getting overrun. Here, I'll just take a look.
I'm almost embarrassed to show this, but here it is. Four-wheelers, bicycles, lawnmowers, all of this cluster. I just need more room.
So as you can see, my shop needs some serious decluttering. I need some more space, but putting up a bigger shed, buying a new house, these things are just not in the budget. So instead, I'm going to put a small addition on the side of this shop so I can get all of that stuff out of here. Hopefully you can watch this video all the way to the end and hopefully you'll learn something from it. If you do, I ask that you please like and subscribe. And like I always say, even if you don't, please like and subscribe. Now let's get right into the build.
So here we go. The concrete guys showed up and they've got everything formed and ready to pour. I didn't want any concrete trucks on my new driveway, so they're using a buggy back and forth from the road. This takes a little more time, but it's really kind of fun to watch. Overall, I'm really happy with the work these guys did. They were a great crew, they all had good positive attitudes, and the concrete turned out really nice. These guys had the concrete done in one day. They showed up in the morning to form it, ordered the concrete, got it poured, and just a couple hours later they were done. They left one guy behind to finish the concrete while the crew went off to their next job. And after a few passes with the power trowel, a nice coat of sealer finishes it up. Now my work needs to start. First I'm going to strip all the siding off of the side of the shop. Next I'll lay out and cut all my wall plates. The shed is going to measure 16 foot by 20 foot. So I'm using 16-foot material for the front and back walls, and for the 20-foot end wall, I'll use a 12-foot treated 2x4 as well as the 9-foot cutout from the overhead door. We'll finish that up. I'll mark all my anchor bolts and drill with a spade bit. Now it's time to start building walls. You need to crown all your studs so that all the crowns are facing the same direction. This will give you the flattest wall possible. I like to assemble my corner pieces while I'm on the sawhorses, just a little less bending over. I'll start by assembling the top plate, and it'll be hard to tell with the video sped up, but I changed nails between the top plate and the bottom plate. The bottom treated plate requires galvanized or stainless steel nails, otherwise your nails will corrode. Before standing the walls, you need to apply sill seal to the bottom plate. This is a capillary break that prevents moisture from wicking from the concrete into the wood. I cut back the existing house wrap long enough that it can lap onto the new walls, and then I'll just use a marker and mark a plumb line so that I can stand the wall and nail it up. When I laid out the location of the concrete, I did so that these end walls could be nailed directly into studs. Then I'm back to the sawhorses to build the header for my overhead door. Construction on the front wall is going to look just like the back wall, except a lot heavier to lift. And a tip for you, any opening over 5 foot wide requires 2 shoulder studs. As I mentioned, this wall was a bit heavier to lift. I did get it done, but if you have help available, get help. I'll attach diagonal braces on the outside to keep the front and back walls plumb. These braces will stay there until it's time to sheet the walls. For my roof system, I'm actually going to use doubled up 2x6s, but against the walls I'm going to use a 2x10. This is going to give me a good attachment point for my ridge beam. I went with 2x6 to keep my heel height as low as possible, giving me as much pitch as I can get out of this roof. It only ended up being about a 1/12 pitch, and though I am only spanning 10 feet, I'm going with a double 2x6 for a little extra support, and I'm also going to do a doubled up 2x10 ridge beam. And now that I've established the height of this beam, I can use that to build a post for the end wall. Rather than trying to dangle my tape measure across the length of this shed, I'll just set a 2x4 in its place so that I can plumb the post and then mark the 2x4, giving me the length I need to cut these 2x10s. Before I put the 2x10s in place, I'm going to lay out for the rafters. This is much easier to do on the sawhorses than when they're in place. I'll lift up the first beam, set it in place, and before I nail anything I will double check that that exterior post is perfectly plumb, and then I'll set the second ply in place and nail them together. The joist hanger gets attached to the ledger board with structural lag bolts, and 16 penny nails attach the joist hanger to the beam. Once everything's in place, I'll go through and make sure that both plies are flushed up and nailed together solid. I made one rafter to create a template, and then I just lay out a bunch of 2x6s on the sawhorses, trace it, and cut them all out at one time. The rafters on the gable wall are going to get notched so that I can recess 2x4 lookouts in. These are going to support the overhang. Some people will tell you that if it's only a 12-inch overhang, you don't need the lookouts, that you can just do what they call a flying rafter. I don't subscribe to that. I always do lookouts. And if you're worried that cutting all these notches is going to compromise the strength of your rafter, just remember that these rafters will have a full wall underneath of them. I just use my skill saw and make a series of cuts in between my layout lines, knock out the pieces with my hammer, a little bit of cleanup with the chisel, and it's done. Just be sure to lay these out so that your roof sheeting lands on the lookouts. I take my rafters up one at a time. First, I toe nail them to the ridge beam, and then I put the second ply on and nail them together. At this point, I am not nailing them to the walls. The first rafter in from the gable, I only put in one ply for now. This makes it easier to attach the lookouts, and then I'll come back and apply the second ply to that rafter. Once all my rafters are in place, I first verify that my walls are straight, and then I go back and nail them down. And nailing those down is not enough. You actually have to use a rafter tie down. You can either use a hurricane clip, or I like to use these structural legs. This roof is really low pitched, so I'm treating it sort of like a floor system in that every rafter is going to get a joist hanger. I'm installing these with 16 penny nails and using a palm nailer. If you've never used a palm nailer, you should really give it a try. When you have a lot of repetitive nailing, it saves you a lot of time and a lot of effort. I have a couple of 20-foot 2x4s I'm going to install also. These are going to act kind of in the same manner as a collar tie would, in that it's going to keep the walls from spreading apart. This is just another way to help reinforce the roof system. I do live in Wisconsin, and we can at times get some pretty heavy snow. Now it's time to build the gable wall. I'll install the top plate, and then I'll use a laser to transfer my layout marks from the bottom plate up to the top plate. I then just cut all the studs and install them in place. Building the gable wall takes a little more time because you have to measure each stud individually and cut the top of the stud to match the rough pitch. Otherwise, it's business as usual, galvanized nails in the treated plates, standard nails up top. Next up, I'm installing subfascia. And because of the overhang, the subfascia is going to be more than 16 foot long. So I install a 4-foot piece, and then I'll install the long piece. I'll leave it run wild and cut it in place. Installing wall panels by yourself can be a bit cumbersome. But if you put in some nails at the bottom plate, it'll help hold the sheet up and make your job just a little bit easier. Now it's time to start the roof sheeting, and one nice thing about being a low pitch is I can chuck the sheets up there and they don't fall off. I snapped the chalk line to keep this first row of sheeting straight. That's why I'm nailing them from the inside like this. It allows me to see my line better and keep my sheets in a nice straight line. Nailing down this next course of sheeting underneath the soffit is going to be tricky. It's very tight space and I can only get to about 2/3 of it. So for this course, I'm going to lay a bead of glue down on those first two rafters. Using the palm nailer and some 8-penny nails, I was actually able to reach under farther than I thought I could. The next course of sheeting was too tight to get any fasteners, so I screwed these 2x4s to the underside, And then I can fasten those 2x4s right to the side of the rafters. Then it's time for ice and water guard. I chose to put ice and water guard underneath the entire roof because it is such a low pitch. Some might argue that with a metal roof you don't need ice and water guard, but I feel better safe than sorry. Next up is the house wrap. A lot of people think house wrap is just to shed moisture, but it's actually an air barrier. It's to stop wind infiltration. So some people might tell you with an unheated building you don't need the house wrap. However, someday you might decide to heat it, and who's going to ever think to add house wrap later? So it's best to add it now. I'll be installing my soffit and fascia before I start the metal roofing. Some might think it's backwards, but here's why I do it this way. When you hem the metal roofing around the drip edge and press it up tight, it makes it incredibly difficult to tuck the fascia behind the drip edge, so it's easier to install the soffit and fascia first. I'll prep all my roof panels before I start installing the roofing. This simply means I'm going to bend the bottom of the panels so they wrap around the drip edge. First I make a cut 1 inch deep on each side of the panel. A little trick for you, I put marks on each of my tin snips so I don't have to mark every panel. Then I'll use this tool I made to bend the panel. It's simply 2 pieces of aluminum bolted together, a vice grip for a handle, but it worked great. The rib on the side with the nailing flange just needs to be cut back and out of the way. On the finished rib side, the side that snaps over top of the other panel, I leave a little extra hanging so that I can fold it over and close up the end a little bit. I'll start my roofing against the existing wall of the shop. I do this for only one reason. The overhang on my shop is about 32 inches and these panels are 16 inches. This means when I get to the second panel, I'll have full access to the nailing flange. Knowing that my roof system is square, all I need to do is check that my roof panels are running parallel to the roof system, and then I can start fastening them down. I'll use a right angle drill so that I can reach as far under the soffit as I can to get this first panel screwed down. The next panel will then just snap over the first panel, and again screw down at the nailing flange, rinse and repeat till the roof is done. For my final panels, I snap a chalk line, but I'm actually cutting it at about a 1/2 inch long. I'll then use my folding tool to bend at this line and create a small rib. This rib is going to be buried by the gable trim. This just ensures that if any moisture gets underneath the gable trim, it still has to run out the bottom. These final 2 panels just snap into place. The only fasteners will be when I attach the gable trims. I'll screw through the trim and the panel both.
Well, I'm glad to see you made it this far into the build. However, this is where shit goes a little sideways for me. Here's what happened. I thought to myself, I should probably stop making these videos with my iPhone and get a big boy camera. But being the cheapskate that I can be sometimes, I went on Amazon and I ordered a cheap camera, and I filmed the rest of the build with it. And that old adage, you get what you pay for, well, it came true. All the data was corrupted, and I have no additional footage. All I can do is kind of walk you through what I did to complete the shed, and I'll give you a walk around of the final shed. So for the siding, I used all the vinyl siding off the existing shop and reused that on the new shed. I did have to buy a little additional siding for the back side of the shed, but it matches pretty well. On the gable wall, the far end wall, because that roof is so low pitched, if you were to put a horizontal siding in and cut that against that roof line, you'd have some really long cuts that would be unsupported. So for the very top of the wall, I actually did vertical siding. It works out much better. For the overhead door, I picked up a used door from a guy on Craigslist. Yes, I said a used door. I am kind of a cheapskate. But it works perfectly fine. It's got a small dent, but it came with an overhead opener that works perfectly fine. In the springtime, I'll paint it brown to match the rest of the shop. It'll be great. For the service door, I have a 36-inch wide outswing door that I picked up from a building center locally here. I believe that door is actually made for a mobile home, but it works perfectly fine, and an outswing door means I don't have to worry about if I have stuff inside of the shed in front of the door. So now I'm going to give you a walk around of the final shed, and we'll see you on the next video.
Here's a look at the final shed. As I mentioned, I reused the siding from the existing shop, so it's quite dirty and it's going to need a scrubbing in the springtime. And a little brown paint on the doors, and this space will be ready to use. Thanks for watching.